One of the most powerful interviews I've ever watched wasn't even recent. It was taped in 1971 on WNET Soul, and it was basically a two-part discussion between 47-year-old James Baldwin and 28-year-old Nikki Giovanni. It's my favorite interview of all time, not just because of who they are, but really because of what they dared to say. They talked about Black life in America and the fight for racial justice, and basically the shifting roles of Black men and women. It was raw, it was brilliant, and it was deeply necessary, especially at that time. But I also think that it's necessary today. So you can watch the full thing on YouTube or read it in the book called A Dialogue. There's one moment that I always come back to every single time. Baldwin starts speaking not just to Giovanni, but to all of us. And I really want you guys to hear it.
And everybody's put us now what I was trying for myself, after all, first of all, to elucidate for myself a theology and the effects of a theology, which I, at that moment, realized I carried in myself. You know, it was not the world that was my oppressor only. Because what the world does to you, if the world does it to you long enough and effectively enough, you begin to do it to yourself. You become a collaborator, an accomplice of your own murderers, because you believe the same things they do. You know, they think it's important to be white, and you think it's important to be white. They think it is shameful to be black, and you think it is shameful to be black. And you have no corroboration around you of any other sense of life. You know, all those corroborations which are around you are, in terms of the white majority standards, so deplorable, they frighten you to death. You don't eat watermelon. No, you get so rigid you can't dance. You know, you can hardly move by the time you're 14. You know, you're always scrubbed and shining. You know, a parody of God knows what, because no white person has been, as clean as you have been forced to become. And you got somehow to begin to break out of all of that and try to become yourself. You know, it's hard for anybody, but it's very hard if you're born black in a white society. Hard because you've got to divorce yourself from the standards of that society.
The moment that lives rent free in my mind is when Baldwin says, "It's not the world that was my oppressor, and you become a collaborator, an accomplice of your own murderers, because you believe the same things they do." He's not just talking about racism, he's talking about the internalized weight of it, the way it shapes how we move, how we speak, how we see ourselves. He says, "You don't eat watermelon, you can hardly move by the time you're 14. That line is not just a metaphor. That's memory. That's survival. That's the cost of trying to be acceptable in a world that never wanted you whole." I struggle with this, especially in white spaces. I wonder if they're judging me on those stereotypes. It makes me think, do I want watermelon? Do I even like watermelon? Or do I not like watermelon because they think I like watermelon? It's just a conundrum. But then he says, you have to break out of all of that and try to become yourself. That's the part that stays with me. Because becoming yourself as a Black artist, as a Black writer, a Black human, that's revolutionary. And it's hard. But Baldwin reminds us that it's necessary. So this interview didn't just inspire me, it affirmed me. It reminded me why I write, why I create, and why I fight to become.